Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Layover. Another button faff, but it was fine. Tonight on the show, Mark talks about aviating. Lyndsay gets her wires crossed, and I try and convince you all that I'm a mess. Welcome aboard the Layover.
One life for the revolution. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back, actually, to have some decent internet. Cheers, everyone.
Scottie, it's so nice to see you.
And hear you.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd say that.
Yeah, it's more the hearing thing than the see thing. The seeing thing was really good. I have no idea what went on. That was courtesy of Intercontinental Hotel Group, a very good group, very poor internet.
Amazing, isn't it? Hotel internet.
What I do like to see is that we've coordinated our dress this evening.
Merch.
Oh, yeah. Merch. Look, anybody wants some Layover t-shirts in tent size? I've got a few.
One of my daughters said, I'd like some merch, please. I think she just wants like free clothing, but she actually wanted one of our t-shirts.
Her bad lockdown's gone.
Yeah, I think so, maybe. Did you watch the show last week? Well, I know you did watch the show, but what did you think of Andy and co? Because we haven't had a chance really to catch up.
No, we haven't. I thought it was amazing, actually. I thought I was quite jealous when I saw that picture of him flying the Bouchon and the other airplanes. I was very, very jealous of that, but not so jealous of flying around with explosives attached to my wings. It may look nice from the outside, not so keen on being inside, if I'm fair.
It's humble as well. You know, it'd be really, really good to go up and actually see what they see the airplanes themselves. Actually, when we're allowed out, which is kind of soon. Tomorrow, really.
Oh, actually, yeah, cool. We'll have to do that. That'd be really good. Actually, maybe in May we can have a layover all about the warbirds. That would be really cool.
God, you make it sound like we haven't planned all this stuff for the whole year.
Yeah, well, you know we haven't. So,
guest.
Yeah, you know we haven't actually planned it. Mark.
Yes.
You've been aviating this week? Is it aviate or aviating?
I haven't been aviating.
But we say that the headset's lying on the kitchen table, so I think there's a plan for tomorrow.
Yeah, if Adam's on.
Sweet.
I can take a passenger tomorrow.
Oh,
so I'm going to take my bestest buddy Adam flying, because a share's come up in another cub, and it would be a shame. It would be a shame if he didn't buy a share. But anyway, that's by the by. Yes, aviate. Yeah, this is United. United,
who
cool. I've done a little bit of work with United in another life, and actually I find them from a sort of professional point of view extremely good. And I think I've said that before. And they got a load of flack because they've basically come out and said, "Okay, we're going to do some positive discrimination. We've had enough of 6% females and poor numbers of sort of Black and Asian and minority and ethnic
underrepresented
people being poorly represented. So we're going to do it." And the amount of flack they got was, well, frankly, a little bit disappointing. I think there was lots of chat about, oh well, shouldn't it go to the best people? Well, yeah, it should, provided you're looking at all of the people who are going to form that best cadre. But I was amazed at some of the responses, but good on them for doing it and actually taking sort of positive steps to really kind of change the industry.
Because there's very few airlines that are willing to kind of commit to that,
It's a lot of money, isn't it? I think between them, between United and a major US bank, they've committed something like 2.4 million to this, and they've bought some flight schools. So they've not just throwing the kitchen sink at it. They're really throwing the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
They're really good. They really mean it, and which is great because, well, as you and I know, Scott, there's a lot of people that look like, well, me and you, who do this job, and it doesn't matter which side of the Atlantic you are. And it's good that we've got Lyndsay and Lauren to talk about that today. So that's going to be pretty interesting. But there we go. Good on them. Yeah, 1.2 million, I think, from a major US bank. That's a decent amount of money to get going. Hopefully, there's more on the way.
I agree. Sounds great.
Scottie, what are you talking about? This nonsense about you being a miss. What is this? This is total nonsense.
Well, this is part of my ploy to lose some weight, Mark. So I don't know if you heard about this.
And your legs off.
Yeah, I'd have to cut my legs off to lose this kind of weight. So the reason for me becoming a miss is so that I can lose 34 kilograms. I don't know if you heard about this story. AIB published a report this week about a TUI 737 taken off from Birmingham last July, outbound to Malaga. They used a new load sheet stroke reservation system integration thing. And anyone who was booked on the flight as miss, it was assumed they were a child and were planned at 35 kilograms rather than 69. So with a number of ladies being on the flight, meant that the aircraft was about 1.2 tons over the weight that the load sheet showed.
Presumably it was coded by someone from 1952 who assumes that all these are children. That's a bit weird, isn't it?
I know, it's utterly bizarre, but actually the pilots caught it. Press made a big deal of it, saying, the airplane was 1.2 tons overweight. It is planning weights, and actually the plane wasn't limited and it wasn't full, so it wasn't, performance limited or anything like that. So
you make a really good point actually about kind of open culture and trapping those errors and reporting and then talking about it and sharing it. I mean, that's basically how aviation gets better, is by knowing that stuff and sharing it. Good on them.
I totally agree. Good on them for reporting it. Testament to the positive reporting culture that TUI has, obviously. I wonder how many times it's gone unnoticed on other times when people haven't counted how many kids were on board. And apparently that's how they caught it. They actually looked down the back and didn't see 50 kids and thought, hang on a minute, there's something not right here.
And it's interesting because a charter airline like TUI, they may well indeed have 50 kids on board.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah, I know.
That is really interesting.
So sticking with the theme of 737s, the MAX has been in the paper yet again. Just when you think the tide is beginning to turn, they've had another small snag. And this time it seems to be electrical. So over a dozen carriers have sort of withdrawn their MAXs from service. And let me just quote what they think the issue is. So they've grounded them to allow for verification of that sufficient ground path exists for a component in the electrical system. Now, I have no idea what that means.
I failed electric like twice. So
there's lots of head shaking over here as well. I've got no idea what that means either. That's obviously written by a lawyer, not an engineer.
Yeah, another chapter in this 737 MAX saga.
I think it's a little bit of a shame. New airplanes tend to have service bulletins and things like that, and some of them are, don't fly the airplane, but it has had an appalling entry into service. It's a real, it's both a tragedy and a shame. But there we go. Anyway,
no, I know that helicopter month, Scott, is over.
That's a shame.
And I know that you were gutted about that, but
yeah, right.
Mark and I were discussing. Have you seen the new Turkish war? Well, it's not even. I don't even know what it's called. Yeah, it's the police, and it's called the attack helicopter.
Yeah.
And look at that.
That's the police. The police have got this.
Yeah. Now,
gee whiz.
I'm rather hoping that their police do different things to our police.
Because I couldn't see that in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, that's gonna scare some of the COVID deniers down in Westminster, isn't it? Holy moly! Look at that.
hello there, moped scooter thief guy. Have a bit of my Gatling gun. Look at the state of it. That is a monster.
I can't believe the police have actually got that. That's serious hardware, isn't it?
And it's called the Attack, ATAK.
They're not messing about with the name there, are they?
It's a cool name
No.
to go with it.
It's apparently a license built. It's indigenous, but it's license built Italian helicopter. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
After Helicopter Month, and if anybody's watching haven't watched the helicopter ones, I'm kind of missing helicopters a bit. I kind of like them a bit now.
I have to say, when we did get to the last one, I was coming round, actually. I was really coming round to it. It does look like a bit of licensed hooliganism, actually, which would kind of suit the three of us, really. But I don't know how long it would last before we crashed one. That would be my concern.
And not enough kitchen facilities on board either. So,
no, agreed. And bathroom. Right. Before we get tonight's guest on, I just thought we'd spend a few minutes celebrating the life of a passionate aviator that sadly died this week. His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. Most people kind of associate him with the sea and his passion for navy and all things nautical. But a bit like me, he didn't really like boats. Deep down, he didn't really like boats. And he actually became a very accomplished aviator. Many people might know that he started in 1952 flying a Chipmunk. He got the bug for flying, and then in 1953 he was earned his RAF wings at the RAF Central Flying School. He then went on to gain his Navy helicopter wings before in 1956 getting his civilian license. Mark, in fact, you were talking earlier, he completed a flying tour of South America, piloting with his good friend, Captain Peter Middleton. Now, Middleton, there's a name that rings a bell. He's actually the grandfather of the Duke's now granddaughter-in-law, the Duchess of Cambridge. So the families were intertwined even back in the 60s.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. No, neither did I, actually. Really interesting. So go on. He flew all the way up to his 70th birthday. How many hours do you think the Duke accrued in that time, Mark? Go on. Any guesses?
I'm not going to guess, but he did a lot of flying. There's a picture there I can see bottom left. So I believe he was the first Brit to fly the 757 when it was brand spanking new, still under test. So that probably see on just on the coaming, there's probably a yaw marker or something like that, the test aeroplane, and that's with the test pilot from Boeing. I mean, that's quite amazing. It's just amazing. Go on, someone's guessed in the so John. Oh, hello, John. I had a nice message from him earlier. 6,000 hours.
Yeah, just under, actually. It's a really good guess, John. Too much beer. He just under 6,000 hours, 59 different types in his logbook. And although he started with the sea, like so many of us, he saw his true passion, saw the light, and came into aviation. For all of his foibles, I think he was a dedicated husband, consort to the Queen for over 70 years, be missed by many. Real tragedy. And one of the few marshals of the Royal Air Force, just as an aside.
So many people have done DFE and been better off for it.
Yeah, I did a bronze. I got to bronze. Bit O level, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. Go on. What did you get, Lyndsay?
Obviously gold.
Oh, yeah.
It was bloody gold.
Of course it was. I knew. As soon as we went there, I don't even know why I bothered asking. Mark?
No, I didn't do it. It's probably obvious. It didn't reach that far. It didn't get to Essex. We were still busy, like hijacking cars and things like that up in Essex when that was going on.
Rolling
yeah, that's right. Rolling my Citroen AX. Another story. Anyway, God rest his soul. The good old Duke of Edinburgh. Wonderful.
Right.
Amazing.
So he was amazing. Right, let's get on with tonight's guest. Right. This evening, we're joined by Lauren Wilson, who's one of only a few female aerobatics pilots flying on the UK circuit. She's had a varied career in aviation, from actually never wanting to fly aerobatics, and we can talk about a little bit more about that later, flying surveys and then eventually flying as a display pilot, and combining that with a commercial career for Flybe. The demise of Flybe sadly meant a new direction for Lauren, and she's now working for a tech startup called Kinetic Air as their flight safety officer, as well as also having just fulfilled a lifelong ambition to become an FI and teach ab initio students some flying and aerobatics. And I know you want to talk about that later, Mark, because you're renewing yours in the coming months. But before we get Lauren on, should we just have a little sneaky peek at what she does?
Yes. Yes.
Why not? Here we go. I'm going to have to speak to the editor because that cut off really quick at the end there, and I didn't mean it to cut off like that.
We need to give Jamie Hunter a call and say, look, we can do video editing as well. You know,
yeah, we can cut the wings off of videos as well as photographs.
Got his axe ready for a bit of editing.
He's going to love it. A regular on social media, Lauren dishes out no-nonsense replies, and like me, doesn't suffer fools lightly. Welcome to the show, Lauren Wilson. Hello, Lauren. Welcome.
Oh, hey everyone. I'm not sure I like that description. I mean, I suffer fools on a regular basis, to be honest. It's just, I don't really like it.
Good.
Lauren, welcome to the show.
That was amazing.
It was awesome. And at one point, I didn't notice until the second time I played it through there that actually halfway through, I noticed your mouth filled up with stuff. Was that you being sick halfway around and having to swallow it down?
No, that was how I'd had a swig of gin.
I was sick just watching it. Never mind flying it. Oh my goodness. Keep aircraft the right way up.
I said to Lyndsay just at the start that she couldn't do that because of her hair. She's got a lot of hair, and your entry push, there's a lot of hair that comes up there. Lyndsay would basically black out the cockpit, and that would be the end of the flight from that point onwards. But it's very cool. Very
right.
Cool.
Anyway, Lauren, I'm going to start off tonight. So every person that we've got on the show has their own kind of unique pathway into aviation, and yours seems to be very, very cool. So can you maybe give us a little insight into how you got into it, how you got into flying? Because flying wasn't the kind of route that you started with, was it?
No, I actually started out as an engineer, believe it or not. I can make things and fix things. I can still sort of do that, although if you ask Simon, he might argue against that, to be honest. But yeah, no, I was brought up in a very sort of underprivileged kind of council estate background, and was always kind of led to believe and told actually that, you know, flying was not something that I'd be able to do as a kid. And it was like, well, watching the airliners going over, I always thought that just looked amazing. You know, never been abroad on holiday, you know, never been on an airliner, never done anything really. But I just thought there was something about it. I just thought it was amazing watching them flying over, and I thought I'd really like to do that. But yeah, I was told by basically anyone and everyone that I was involved with that, yeah, don't even think about that. It's ridiculous. You can't do that. So I went off and I did an engineering apprenticeship and became an engineer instead. Then I saved everything I had and went and got my PPL as a big kind of up yours to everyone that said I couldn't do it. And yeah, from that point on, I kind of fell in and out of aviation a little bit. So I got my PPL at RAF Halton in 2000 and oh god, it was about 11, 12 years ago now, I guess. I think. Oh god, God knows. I'd have to look in my logbook to see when it actually was. And I kind of stopped flying very shortly after I got my license, as a lot of people do. Had a change of job, change of circumstance, moved to Wales, and sort of did a lot more. I was back up. I was big into rock climbing and mountaineering, all that kind of stuff. And actually moved away to do a lot more of that. Stopped flying for about 3 years, and a friend of a friend had a 2-seat Pitts. So I kind of got to a point where I thought, well, I want to get my license back current and get back into flying. And the logical thing to do was to go and have a go in this Pitts, because I'd seen one in the hangar at Holton when I was learning to fly. I just thought it would look like the coolest thing in the world. I thought aerobatics was stupid. I'll be honest. I was like, well, why would you want to turn an aeroplane upside down? What is the point in that? That just seems dangerous and ridiculous and stupid. So I spent a long time convincing the guy, the instructor of this aeroplane, that no, I don't want to do any aerobatics. I just want to fly the aeroplane. I just want to see what it's like. Needless to say, eventually, towards the end of the flight, he convinced me that at the very least, I had to experience a loop in the thing once. And he was dead right. You can't fly that kind of aeroplane and not have a go at something. And it was just like this life-changing epiphany, really. It was, I could just remember looking up through the canopy, and it was like everything was green. I'm like, oh, this is weird. What is going on? And that was it, really. I was hooked from that moment on. And I got into flying competitions in that aeroplane. Was relatively good at it. Really enjoyed it, and really enjoyed the challenge, and enjoyed what I was learning. Got my license back current, all that kind of stuff. And eventually decided that if I wanted to compete and do a bit more, I couldn't really afford to keep hiring the very expensive 2-seater. So obviously the cheapest and most cost-effective way to do more aerobatic flying was to buy an aeroplane.
Don't say that. Lauren, don't say that. That's not what
I couldn't agree more. I'm not the aerobatics, but I think the most cost-effective way to do it is to buy one.
If you ignore the massive outlay at the start to buy the thing, and you actually go and you actually just completely just forget that. That's we don't need to worry about that part. But the logic of it was relatively sound. I mean, for the amount of flying I was doing, it made sense. It made a lot of sense. If you're only doing 5 or 6 hours a year, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a massive outlay that's never going to kind of pay itself back. But I was doing 80, 90 hours a year in this thing. I was doing a lot of flying, and it did make sense. How I got the loan to buy the thing in the first place is another kind of story in itself. But needless to say, it took a long time to pay off. And it was only, I think, a year before. It might have been last year that I finally got that paid off, actually. So it is now mine, properly mine. But yeah, and I did some competitions, a few years doing that, and decided that I wanted the aeroplane to kind of help fund itself, because it was cheaper than hiring, but it was still very, very expensive, like ridiculously expensive. So I got talking to a few people who said, well, you could do some display flying, earn some money from it. I was like, I didn't even realize it was an option, certainly on a PPL. And yeah, so from that point on, I kind of went and found a mentor, went through the process with the CAA, got a display authorization, and then just started basically spam emailing every airshow organizer until a couple actually agreed to book me, which in the start, that was the hardest part of it, actually. As an unknown, why would someone book you to go and sort of fly a show? I had the advantage of being a minority novelty act, I guess. And I was quite persistent with my campaign, shall we say. And anyway, it paid off. Started doing a few shows, and gained a bit of a reputation for actually being sort of all right at it. And ended up doing a load more of that. And I've been displaying for the last 7 or 8 seasons, something like that. I didn't do last year, didn't do the year before. No, I don't think. I think I was working. Obviously last year didn't happen at all. But yeah, I've been display flying for a good 8 years or so. And done bits and pieces on top of that as a class rating instructor. I sort of teach and mentor sort of advanced level or unlimited level aerobatics, and bits and pieces, and it's just always been great fun. And ended up kind of quitting my engineering job. I had my own business by this point, sort of doing consultancy work, and just got kind of fed up with it. My husband Simon, who's also a pilot, he he was fed up with me being a grumpy cow, I think, as well. So his view was like, just go and do something you actually want to do, which is at the point at which sort of three years ago I went and did my commercial licenses and got into commercial flying. And I loved every second of it up until last year, when the reality of, you're not an airline pilot who's even been made redundant at least once, apparently.
Yeah. And Lauren, you so you said people were almost like telling you that you couldn't do it. Flying's kind of not for you. It's not the sort of thing that our kind of gang do. Did any of those people kind of turn around and end up sort of supporting you in any way? I mean, not necessarily financially, but encouraging.
It's a tough one to really go into too much. I mean, my personal background has been quite a mixed bag, shall we say, and there are areas that I'm not going to go into in too much detail, but needless to say, like you can either come out of something like deeply depressed or just determined to change it, and that was kind of where I came out of my upbringing. It was like I don't see why I have to go down this route that everyone expects me to go down, because that's what culturally happens from those kind of backgrounds, and I don't see why it has to be that way. So I decided to just do something about it. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying it's something that everyone can do, but certainly there are opportunities out there if you go looking for them with enough sort of determination. I've had, for sure, some people have been surprised and have sort of come around to it and just think it's awesome that actually you've managed to do all this, and so I mean, it's an interesting question. It's a yes and no answer. So yes, there are some people come around and be like, I just think it's great, it's amazing that you've managed to do all that. But others, good question. I honestly don't know.
and look, everybody's got their own pathway, haven't they? And that's one of the wonderful things about this show is that pretty much every guest has got a slightly different pathway in and a slightly different kind of life through aviation. But it can be an amazing community. And you mentioned kind of getting a mentor for the display flying. Presumably they're kind of supportive individuals, and that community is pretty supportive.
Yeah, I mean, it can be quite cliquey. I think, like with anything in these kind of niche areas of aviation, it can be quite cliquey. But I'd have to say the airshow scene itself is the least cliquey area of aviation I've ever come across, and I've had so much support and help and just encouragement from pretty much everyone I've come across on the circuit itself. I've had a lot of support and a lot of coaching and mentoring from quite a few different people over the years, and I think essentially everyone wants to see everyone else succeed. I mean, within certainly the airshow community, everyone thrives on each other's success, and shows thrive on the success of their performers. So there's an awful lot of support, and the CAA process for even getting into doing it requires a mentoring process. So you automatically, as part of the actual procedure for getting the bit of paper signed off, you have to go down this route, and you have to have someone looking out for you and basically showing you the ropes and getting you to where you need to be. And I think that culture is has been built in for years. And it's changed a little bit in recent times, just because of the nature of how the regulations changed and everything else. But on the whole, it's a really fun community of people that just like to sort of support each other, which has been really, really nice, actually. And it's been a fantastic thing to have been involved with. And I feel very privileged to have found my place there.
Yeah. And Lauren, I've been bottling it up for a little while, but basically I want to talk about the pits. So I used to part own one. And it's no secret, actually, that my very first trip in the pits, I wasn't totally sure that I would like it. It was such a visceral, harsh experience in comparison to everything I'd flown before. I thought, number one, I'm not sure if I can do this. And number two, I'm not sure I'm even going to like it. However, that changed very much. Put us in the cockpit of your pits. What's it like to fly? I don't know, relate it to something that maybe many of our viewers might know about? So 152 or something.
Oh, yeah, this is an interesting one because I have to say, as an aeroplane for doing anything other than like just flying aerobatics, like going places, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's loud. It's very, very loud. And noise cancelling headset, forget it. Don't bother with a set of Bose A20s in certainly not in a single seater. I can't remember if I even tried one in the 2-seater. They don't work. They just don't. You get rid of most of the noise except the high pitched stuff that actually hurts your ears because that will get straight through the noise cancelling. So I mean, you mentioned the hair at the beginning. I actually now wear a helmet these days. I did have longer hair. I've gone back to the short hair thing, which is like a horrible, COVID haircut. I haven't had, anyway. Let's not go there. There's like a couple of reasons I wear the helmet. It's like, one, I've hit my head on the canopy a number of times and thought that actually for that to happen at 50 feet inverted over the seat is probably not great. So I'll, at least proof myself a little bit. But also it's got built-in kind of noise cancelling stuff and like a lot more kind of passive clamping. So it's a lot better for your ears. So that's the main reason I use it. But yeah, no, it's noisy. It's very noisy. It's about the loudest thing I think I've ever flown, actually. Even the Axe and the Harvard are quiet by comparison. It's crazy. It's like sitting inside a drum. They're horrendous to land. I've done, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 landings in them, and that still scares the crap out of me every time. It's like as soon as you think
welcome to flying with me on the Airbus.
as soon as you think you've mastered it, it will bite you. It keeps you on your toes. That's for sure. So compared to flying something like, I don't know, say your 152 is like your Ford Focus. This is more of a caterum, I guess. It's a much more. I think visceral is a really good word, actually, Mark, for the experience. I mean, I wouldn't describe it as particularly aggressive. Certainly, if you fly things like extras that have got a much higher sort of roll rate of performance and all the rest of it, then you can fly those really, really aggressively. The best way to fly a Pitts is with a degree of style and finesse, for sure. But then that's up to you.
That's me out.
It's however you want to fly it, but you'll get the best out of the machine by sort of understanding its kind of character and its soul. And I think most fabric aeroplanes have a definite kind of character and a feel to them.
Yes.
It's full of character, that's for sure. So yeah, it's a horrible thing to fly generally, but it's just full of character. It's a wonderful toy to play with, and for flying aerobatics, I can't say there's anything else I would prefer to fly, and I've flown a few.
So I flew the extra, and a friend of mine bought one brand new, and we met Mr. Extra, and he said, "Look, we've designed the airplane to be as transparent as possible, so you basically don't know you're flying it." And the other thing was, it actually wounded me, the Extra. I physically beaten up by the thing. The Pitts is a kind of a different thing. As you say, there's lots of challenging aspects to it, but it's a kind of smooth, fluid thing. If you want it to be, it can be quite aggressive if you want it to be, but you definitely get the best out of it if you're.
What about for Scottie? Like how it's just
he wouldn't fit in.
straight and level.
Seriously. So I was just thinking. Lauren isn't selling it to me. So you bump your head, right?
Yeah,
it's awful to fly.
-4, it's like
awful to fly. Yeah. Made of fabric. You're talking about things being transparent. Anything that an airplane is transparent, that's not good. I'm telling you now. Right. So I'm the only person who did their RAF Aeros check entirely on instruments. I didn't even look out. I tell you what, and that was genuinely. I wish I still had that debrief from my RAF Aeros check. So I did it in a Firefly and an M260, and at the end, the guy goes, "Passed." Only person who I've ever seen do his aerobatics check on instruments. Never looked out once. Done. Fit multi-engine only. Right way up only. That was it. Fine.
For you.
Fine. Off to the grey-green turboprop.
I genuinely think you'd have trouble. You're sort of too tall and big, and I think your feet are too big to kind of properly operate it. It's a bit of a dainty thing.
So I'm fat and got clown feet. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
So,
Okay,
Lauren,
let's move on.
You've done your PPL, you've put your letters out, you've got your errors rating, you've put your letters out to all the Airshow hosts to say, you know, I'm available, I'd like to come and display at your show. Just tell us how you go from thinking, right, okay, I need to get a sequence. Like, how do you kind of make the sequence up? How do you know, what do you have in mind when you're creating a show to sort of demonstrate the best of your ability and the best of the aircraft's capability?
Sure. Okay. So I'll talk about this from my individual personal perspective, because everyone has their own kind of ways of doing this. And there are different, certainly with aerobatic displays, there are different schools of thought on, you know, what the best methods are and how to do things. And the CAA have offered various pieces of differing guidance over the years. And ultimately you find your own way. So for me, I mean, part of the initial getting you display authorization process is part of the mentoring is in how to build sequences and how to get the best out of it and how to deal with the weather and varying environmental conditions and all the rest of it. So actually, as part of the process, you start off with like a sequence that you're going to fly nominally, and then you'll have a secondary one, which is one you'll fly when the cloud base is low or the visibility is bad or it's raining and all the rest of it. And then you'll have a flat one, which are for the really bad days where all you can do basically is take off, fly around and land again. Because air shows still go on when it's really, really pants, and it's like, you know, especially in a little canopy with a little canopy here, you get wet, and I've got, you know, you get very wet. I've actually sat with a bin liner on my lap before to stop myself getting my pants getting wet. I'm not even joking. That's a genuine Pit's tip for you for a sliding canopy, bin liner winner. That's how glamorous air show flying is, because you have to fly in the crap sometimes, and there's no way around it. I mean, there'll be limits on what you can and can't do and what you can fly in, but you'll be surprised how bad it can be. You know, no one's watching because it's raining and they've all gone for an ice cream, so it's like, well, okay, I might fly something slightly toned down for my own benefit, and also for the fact that there's not much point really trying that hard when nobody's paying any attention. But the process itself is it's relatively straightforward for the most part. Building the sequence is the hard part. And for me, because I display different types as well, I mean, it's not just the pits. I mean, I've displayed the RF4 motor glider, which was a very different thing to kind of put a display together for. And I've flown the Ep.18 display as well, which again was another different style of aeroplane and a different style of display. And I personally like to stylistically tailor what a display looks like to show off the aeroplane. It's not about me, it's about what I can do. It's about how the aeroplane can be best shown off. So I like to know about the history of the machine and what its origins were, what it was designed to do, and what the classic kind of maneuvers they were sort of like designed to fly. And I tend to build from that. So I'll pick a core set of kind of things that I want to show off. Like it'll be either individual maneuvers that you want to see the thing do, or it will be what provides the best angles for the photographers to then get photos. Because everyone likes to see, like certainly with something like a pit, is that knife edge profile, so you get that proper top side. Yeah. So I tend to then build a display around different aspects of like how they can get those angles, so people can get the best sort of images that they want to out of the show. Because ultimately, you go to an air show to perform. It's not about you; it's about what the people watching want to see. So I spend a lot of time talking to people. I mean, I wander around in the crowds and sort of ask people what they think. You know, what was good, what was bad, what did you like, what photos have you taken, and go and sort of just try and get a feel for, you know, what can I do better next time? How can I offer a better value to the spectator? Because ultimately they're paying the bill for me being there. So you've got to think about it from a sort of customer service perspective as well, which not many people tend to think about to start with.
And do people generally give you good feedback for that? People sort of, you know, have you had like a variety of responses, or people, you know, quite blunt and say more of this, or actually I thought you had it just right?
It's interesting. Mostly you just get, oh yeah, that was amazing, and all that, which is nice to hear, but it's not that useful.
Yeah.
Critique has to be sought out. So generally it's nice when there are some of your peers at a show and they won't be watching unless you specifically ask them to, because they'll be busy doing other things or just chatting, or, you know, because nobody watches each other fly generally unless there's something particularly interesting going on, or you've asked them to. So it shows where there are people that kind of that I look up to and admire, and whose opinions I want, I'll tend to ask at the show, could you watch my flight and give me some feedback on what you think I could do better, or what looked good and what didn't. And you can get some really, really useful critique from that kind of thing. Opinions from general members of the public, spectators, can be quite. It'll either be like, oh yeah, it was just amazing, and you kind of like, well, yeah, okay, it's, you know, big up my ego, yeah, great, but it's not actually that useful in terms of like what I'm going to change or what I'm going to do better next time. But on the other hand, you sometimes get the odd kind of golden nugget piece of information of like, oh yeah, well, you did such and such, and I'd never seen that before, and like, oh, okay, that was something actually really, really simple, but just you sometimes find that it's the simplest things actually have the most impact. So I've over the years taken a lot of complexity out of my display sequences for various reasons, because the skill really is to do the bare minimum to provide them the biggest impact, because the higher the physical toll on you, the less capacity you have to deal with anything else that's going on. So the simpler technically you can make the sequence, with it still looking good, the better you can actually you're better at your situational awarenesses. So either I'm not talking about things going on and having emergencies and things, because that's another, you just kind of switch into another mode with all that kind of stuff going on. But if you're flying somewhere where, let's say it's a really windy day with a low cloud base, if you've got a sequence that you find quite straightforward and quite simple, you've got a lot more capacity to then actually pay attention to what the wind's doing to you during each individual maneuver, and what kind of speed you need to carry and where do you need to be to actually position to get the best out of what the wind's doing. So the more you do and the more you take out and the more capacity you build yourself, the better the performance can be, because you can actually put it in the right place. And that's the real skill that I've kind of spent the most time trying to learn, is actually because you look at people's photos or videos, or even better, and it's like, well, if half of it was, half a mile away in another county, what was the point? But if I can do something that's all in that really small space right in front of everyone, even if it's a bit simpler, it's a much higher impact performance. So that's. I'm
really glad you mentioned the technicality. Sorry to interrupt you, Lauren, and the size of a county, because I've taken all the technicality out of my PA-28 flypasts and display sequences. And they now involve flying past once, turning in an area the size of Wiltshire, and flying past again about 50 minutes later. And that's about as much as I can do for me, but it's really interesting. I've got to ask, and I hope you don't mind me asking this. I know your husband flies the spinning discs of death for the senior service. Is he also into going upside down? Does he enjoy it as well, or is he more conventional, stay the right way up in his spinning discs of death? Is that danger enough for him? He doesn't need any more.
He's left the Navy now. Actually, flies for Leonardo as a company pilot, which is another thing entirely. So he instructs for
even more danger.
He instructs for foreign clients, which is another level of terror, to be honest. I spent a lot of time in the Philippines, and the stories I've heard, I don't want to hear anymore. Just don't tell me. I don't want to know. But no, that last picture I think you showed of with the eagle in the pits, he's flying the eagle and I'm in the pits. So we have two pit specials these days. There's a red one and a blue one. So the blue one you've seen, so that's Simon in the top, on the top there. Back when we had a share in the eagle as well, but we've actually got two at the Pits S1s at the moment. So there's the red one, which is mine, and his is the blue one. And the plan with that was to put together a formation display act, and it just kind of, life has gotten in the way. But you never know what might be coming in the not too distant future, shall we say. Plans are afoot with all that. But no, he's an ex. We met through display flying, actually. It was the Yak 50 story was, anyway, it's basically the invitation was there. He was displaying for a guy who had this Yak 50, and he managed to break his back, and they needed another pilot, and that was long story short, I went and flew the Yak for them, and that's how I got to know Simon. He used to fly the Swordfish for the RNHF, so he's been displaying longer than I have. He flew the Lynx display for a couple of years as well, so he's done an awful lot more than I have, and some much cooler stuff, to be honest. So,
Maybe
yeah.
we can get him on next week. We're short of guests for next week. Maybe next week he's available. Can you ask?
He's also Northern Irish and doesn't say very much. So, I mean, we'll see.
Lauren,
Shine retiring like Mark.
how do you get yourself in the zone for a display? So how do you sort of both sort of personally and sort of setting up for understanding the environmental conditions, etc.?
Okay, do you want the professional answer or the honest answer?
Always.
Always the honest answer.
I'll tell you how I would. I'll give you both, okay? Because it does.
That's how you do it for real.
It varies from show to show and performance to performance. So let's say, I mean, if I'm flying at an event where I'm not landing, so I'm coming in from home, I'm coming straight into display, and I'm not landing at the event or what have you, then it's a different process, because generally I'm departing from somewhere where I'm not getting much interruption anyway, so I've got as much time as I want to kind of prepare, get everything packed into the aeroplane, make sure everything's zipped in and not going to cause a problem, get whatever level of stuff I have to be wearing, whether it's like just a parachute or there's like a life jacket and all the rest of it. It's like the most uncomfortable thing in the world, trying to fit a parachute and a life jacket and a helmet inside a pit. It's quite tight. So if I'm just going from home, it's quite straightforward, because I can just do whatever I need to do, and there's no real stress. So I just tend to allow at least an hour before my departure time to just get everything ready in case something has happened. If I've got a flat tire or all the rest of it, so there'll be time built in to just deal with any faffage. That said, I have just rocked up like late, having got up late and been like, got to the airfield, pushed the thing out, got in and just gone within 10 minutes. That has happened, and then you're into the world of kind of like it's a bit like the airline world. You get in, you go, and then you deal with all the rest en route. It's just the same, you have to be a little bit more clever with how you have stuff around you. So I tend to use an iPad or just my phone with all the planning software on it to deal with all that. So again, I can just deal with all that in flight, which isn't too much of a problem. If I'm at an air show, this is where it gets more difficult. If you're at an air show, because I quite like going and interacting with the crowds, and a lot of display pilots don't really do a lot of that. There are two schools of thought, and I have two schools of thought myself on this. There are some shows where I haven't got time. I haven't got the time or the capacity to deal with, going and chatting to people and doing the rest of it. I just literally haven't got the time. And for a lot of people, they can't do that. They can't sort of switch between the two roles. And so it's better for them and safer for them to kind of just stay in the pilot's tent and stay in the zone. I like to go and talk to people because I think that's for me, it's a big part of my act. It's being approachable and being someone that, if someone wants to ask me a question, I want to try and answer it if I can, and all the rest of it. But the difficult part then comes with, timing and planning and making sure that I have got enough time to get back to the aeroplane and spend the 10 or 15 minutes of just sort of going through whatever I need to do planning wise or what have you. The worst part is if I've gone somewhere and I've landed and I really need a pee and the toilet is like, I don't know, a kilometre away through the crowd, and it has taken me over an hour to get from the aeroplane to the toilet at a show before. And I tell you what, it's the hardest thing in the world is putting on the brave face and chatting to people when all you're thinking is like, I need to go like now because I'm going to wet myself.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, madam, but I need a win.
And I've had to do that, and that's kind of the worst thing. So for me, the honest answer, like at an air show, if I don't want to be interrupted and don't want to be approached, I'll either put some clothes on that means that it's not obvious who I am or what I'm doing, or I will go and hide in the toilet for 20 minutes before I need to depart, because that's where they can't get to you. And I'm not joking, that is literally my tactic. I will go if I need space, if it's a difficult day and I need time to plan and get my head into the zone. And sometimes I don't really need that. It's fine. You can go on a beautiful Cab OK day. You can jump in. It's a display I've flown 20 or 30 times in the year. Everything's all happy, blah, blah, blah. Just jump in and go. That's no problem. But if it's a hard day and you've got to sort of think about, how am I going to operate? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do if this happens? I'll go and lock myself away in the bathroom. for 20 minutes, half an hour beforehand, because that's the only place that you can't be interrupted. So that's my top tip for anyone wanting to get into the display scene. This is how glamorous it is. You go and lock yourself in the loo. Woohoo! But yeah, I mean, that's for me, that's how it works. It's the best way, because
the innuendo is off the scale now, Lauren. I'm going to have to stop you.
Sure.
We've got you wearing. We've got you. I'm going to put some clothes on. I'm going to get hard in the aeroplane. I'm going to hide in the toilets. This is all.
We didn't read anything into that. Okay, it was only.
I've been looking at the comments, and I'm not the only one to have noticed. Let's just say there was a little bit of innuendo there. I do have a solution for the toilet problems, though. Display this, and you can take your own toilet with you. The reason I bring this up, Lauren, is.
Have you ever been in the toilet on a Dash 8, Scott? I mean, seriously.
No, I'll probably not get it. Again, it'll be a bit like a pit special. There is no way I'm going to get in it.
If you had, you'd know that's not the answer. Trust me.
So you did mention, Lauren, you had a period flying with Flybe prior to the airline sadly going into liquidation. What made you choose Flybe? Is it because it was local? Because I know you live in the West Country. Was it a conscious decision to do that, or was it just a matter of timing? The job was available at the right time.
Bit of all three, actually. But in all honesty, I mean, a bit like I said at the beginning, I never wanted to get into aerobatics originally. When I did my commercial licenses, I didn't want to fly for an airline either, actually. In all honesty, my plan was to always do something in GA. I mean, I ended up survey flying for a bit on Light Twins, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I ended up thinking, maybe the airlines would be an interesting challenge. And yeah, we used to get the Dash 8s flying over the house here quite regularly, and I just fancied a turboprop rather than a jet. Weirdly, maybe that's just me. It's like I wanted something that was a little bit more hands-on, and it just seemed like the local kind of regional turboprop thing just felt like the best fit for me. And I was very lucky of basically I think I walked into my interview 2 days after finishing my multi-crew course and was offered the job the next day. So it was the time when everything just kind of fell into place, and it was a very exciting sort of period, and I did thoroughly enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that. There's a bit of that. Like that happened at the right time, but also they were who I wanted to go and work for, because I just wanted to be doing. I mean, I had no interest in. If they'd said, "Oh, do you want to fly the Embraer?" I'd have said no. I just fancied flying the turboprop because it just seemed like it would be a bit of a laugh, and it would be good fun.
Was it a fun airplane to fly? Was it a nice airplane to fly?
Nice is not the word I would use for it. I loved it. I loved it to bits, but I think there's a bit of a theme here with like I like flying things that are a bit challenging. It has characteristics and traits that make it particularly good at certain things, but the rest is terrible. It's a horrible handling thing. It's horrendously badly organised. The automatics, well, I mean. Yeah, whatever. It's like, oh, what's it doing now? I don't know. Probably the same thing as yesterday. Right, okay, fine. So it taught you a lot more about systems management than anything else. But you had to kind of fly it with a firm hand. I mean, there's a yaw damper, but there's no rudder channel on the autopilot, so it's like manually trimming. So there's a constant. If anyone ever flew with one, you feel this like horrible yawing in the back. It's because people didn't know how to bloody trim the thing, and it was with two engines that turn the same way with two great big propellers. There's an awful lot of yaw happening at every different power setting. So it just needed a lot more. It needed a lot more kind of finesse to fly than most other things that I've sort of been involved with, and to land it. Oh my god. I think I did probably 3 decent landings in my time at Flybe. The rest were acceptable but firm, shall we say. That was standard for the Dash. It's just what it was. But it was very good on a windy day. There's nothing else I'd rather have been in, to be honest. You knew you'd get in eventually. It's like however bad the weather was, you'd get it down. It was very, very good.
Graham might have found you your perfect job.
Oh God, you've no idea. That literally would be my absolute dream job, and I've applied for many of those positions in the past. And the thing is, I don't have an American license or a Canadian license or a French one, so
So Lauren, the climate's very difficult for people who work in commercial aviation at the minute, and you're incredibly resilient, you know, with what you do, and you've got sort of some great opportunities that you can take. What advice would you give to people who maybe have just lost their job or been made redundant or put into a hold pool to kind of keep their motivation going?
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? I'll be honest, there's nothing I can say that's going to make it any easier. There's nothing anyone's going to say that will make dealing with that any easier. It's a very individual process. I mean, losing a dream job is often compared to kind of, it's a grief process of like losing a loved one. It's kind of, and you sort of assume that, well, no one's died, therefore I shouldn't feel this way. But it's not true. I mean, what goes on in your head is the same. It's the same process that you've got to go through. And I can't. I'm not past it. You know, you mentioned at the beginning that I'm sort of fairly, you know, good with social media. I've not been doing a lot with any social media of late, just because I can't handle it. Sort of mentally, it's sort of something that for my mental well-being, it's just taking a step back from all that has been a necessary part of the process for dealing with what's been going on. I mean, the world is a weird place at the moment. So, I mean, the only really useful thing I think I could say to anyone going through this anything like this is to just accept how you're feeling and come to terms with it, because it is okay. It is normal to not think you can get through it, and there are an awful lot of people out there that can offer support, and organizations that will offer support and guidance and help, and don't be afraid to take it. It's not easy, and there's no miracle cure for any of this stuff. I think it's going to be a long time before the world is back in any kind of sensible state, and who knows what it's going to look like at the end. You've just got to kind of ride it out.
So one of your tweets that I did see was that you've just done your flight instructor rating, or you've just renewed it. Is that right?
I've just done it, actually. There's
Wow.
two things. So I've been a class rating instructor for about 4 years. So it meant I could teach things like differences training for people who hold a single engine piston rating on their private licenses or whatever. So I could do kind of differences training or aerobatic training or tail wheel stuff and all that kind of thing. So I've been doing that for a few years. But I think back in the days where I was told, oh no, you could never fly, that's not who you are, and all the rest of it, the idea of teaching people to fly was always like, you know, that'd be really cool. I'd really like to do that. And I can just remember, like, from the days of doing my flying in my first sort of lessons towards my PPL, I really enjoyed the process, and I really enjoyed kind of how the instructors worked with me, and I just thought it was a really cool job and actually something that I kind of wanted to do. So about, I don't know, just before Christmas, I guess, I got to that point of in my grieving process of still not having dealt with it, and sitting in a place where, yeah, I'm very lucky to have a job where I work from home and do bits and pieces in an aviation kind of environment, which has kept me sane to a large extent. But it's not a flying job, and it's not what I want to be doing day to day, and I want to be doing more and actually being out there and actually flying, because that's kind of who I am. And I got to that point of thinking, yeah, do you know what? I'm fed up of just moping and being sad about everything. I've managed to save enough to be able to afford to do this. I'm going to go get my full instructor rating and hopefully start to teach people from the beginning, so I can share my love of aviation and kind of maybe make a difference to some future aviators myself. It just seemed like a cool thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
So
How did you find the course?
horrendous, absolutely. The hardest thing I have ever done in my life was that course, for various reasons. I mean, like, made the type rating seem like an absolute nothing, to be honest. It was, but it's not that anything was technically that hard. I mean, I'm only learning to teach people how to fly up to PPL level, so nothing's that difficult. Like, the technicalities of it are pretty straightforward, but I had to unlearn all the bad habits that I had learned and developed over 10, 11 years of flying. I had to relearn how to learn. I had to relearn how to analyze myself before I could then even start analyzing other people. And it was psychologically an absolute roller coaster. And I'm not afraid to admit that I nearly quit probably 3 times, and it's to the credit of my instructor and a couple of friends of mine who sort of talked me down from just walking away from it, that I ended up getting through it. But no, it was hard. It was really, really, really hard. And I've got so much respect for people who do this as a job and who instruct others. And I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into learning how to actually do it now for myself, which should be quite fun. But yeah, no, hard, really, really. So I found it really hard.
Lauren, as you say, there's a lot of additional thinking, isn't there, that goes on that you weren't really necessarily expecting to have to do. I'm going to sort of just change tempo a little bit, talk a little bit about equality, because I'm proud to say that here on the Layover, we're 50-50 from an equality perspective, from a gender bias perspective, which is pretty cool. Have you got a perspective on what it's like being, female? You said the display flying isn't particularly cliquey and has been quite welcoming, but have you got any sort of particular views on it? Anything you'd like to share?
The easy answer to that is just going to be like, no, let's move on, shall we? It's,
no, that's not. Sorry, that isn't an option.
Oh, damn it! It's one of those subjects, isn't it? It's the kind of hot topic at the moment with everything that's sort of going on, and certainly United's latest stance on what they're going to do, and the whole, when you start talking about positive discrimination and all the rest of it, I have varying opinions on different aspects of it. Aviation's an interesting one. It is a male-dominated industry, and anyone that says otherwise, just look at the numbers, just look at the statistics. It's like you can't deny that there is a split, and you can't deny that there are going to be issues, because there are always issues when a proportion of the population is a minority. And you're always going to have things that happen and things that go on, and people have differing experiences. Some people will never notice any of the discrimination that happens. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And trying to deny that, that we had that Twitter comment, didn't we, a few days ago when all this sort of kicked off from someone who was saying that, pilots are pilots, what does it matter what the gender is? And I wish more than anything that it were that simple. I would like nothing more than to be referred to as a pilot and not a female pilot, because it's an important differentiator. But unfortunately, we don't live in that utopia where there's a 50-50 split. I don't know what the current statistics are, but the percentage of female pilots or non-male identifying pilots within the industry is a tiny minority. And we've got the same issue with racial diversity as well, actually, and ethnicity and all the rest of it. So it's not purely a gender issue. But I've encountered differing things in different areas. I would say engineering is worse from a sexist point of view than
really?
Yeah. I encountered more kind of noticeable moments, shall we say, in my role but then I was literally the only woman within that particular sector. I think actually my particular niche of engineering, I was one of only two in the world that were women. So it was like But that said, the sexism and kind of gender issues that I encountered generally were more a kind of surprise, and they're like you were out of place because you were different, and people were generally not really negative about it, but they were just kind of a bit taken aback and needed time to adjust to. I'm a classic story. The best one I've got actually in terms of, because talking to Scott, I was trying to think through what issues have I encountered sort of as a woman within. And now this was an engineering one, but this could equally have happened in a sort of flying kind of background. I can remember going out to, I think it was Hungary, or it might have been Romania. No, it was Romania for a job for work a few years ago, and I was running a training course for a company out there. So I flew out, and I was picked up at the airport by the customer, and I could just tell there was something wasn't quite right. And the look on the guy's face that picked me up, it was just this kind of like a bit of kind of sort of shock and puzzlement, and I was like, okay, what's going on here then? I'm thinking, well, I know what's going on here. Oh, here we go again, kind of thing. But went and did the work, and in the coming towards the end of the day, he came back up to me. He said, "Oh, I'm really, really sorry. We've got a bit of a problem because you're not a man." And I was like, "Oh, here we go.
Surprise!"
Here we go. Right. So expecting a bloke to turn up. This is okay. So you can imagine what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be yet another, women aren't good enough to do this, blah, 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 blah. No, the next thing he came out with is, we'd arranged a trip to a lap dancing club this evening. And we don't think that's probably what you want to do, is it? And I was like, not really. It's like, it's okay. I've managed to sort it out. The women from accounts are going to take you out instead. And that was their issue, was that they were expecting a guy. So they'd laid on this hospitality for this bloke to come over to Romania. And they'd arranged all these strippers for the evening as like the evening's entertainment. And so this look of shock and puzzlement on his face wasn't because he didn't think I could do the job. It was because, oh my God, the hospitality's a nightmare. This is really bad. And I just thought
Lauren,
that was
if that ever happens to you again, just to let you know, Mark and I are on you. You've got our WhatsApp now. We'll be available to help you out.
Mark is not available.
I'll be honest. You know what? I'd have quite happily gone. It might have been entertaining, but they
you'd have probably had a great laugh.
It tells you a lot about the organisation that they think that is okay corporate entertainment. That's an extraordinary thing.
This was a few years ago, and it was their way. And I'll tell you what, I had the best time out there, and they were the most fantastic the client in the end, and I had the best evening out with the accounts ladies, and it was fantastic. But I just thought as a kind of gender issue, it was just one of those like, oh, okay, kind of moments, and yeah, so that was one of the amusing ones. The number of times I had people sort of rock up for training courses I was running and go. I had one guy literally walk in the door. I was open door, and I welcomed him and sort of showed him where the room was. And he looked at me. I was like, "Are you the trainer?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, and he stood there and he did this kind of face for a good 2 or 3 seconds, and then he just blurted out, "But you're a woman."
Oh,
and that was literally what he said. That was like, "But you're a woman." I'll never forget it. And I just stood there and I went, "You noticed? Yeah. Fantastic. Have a seat." Yeah. And he was good as gold after that. But it was like, oh, come on. Are we really that backwards still? Aviation is not as bad as that area of engineering was for me, or I haven't seen it. Although I have to say I did get very, very bored of all the, women in the cockpit, or at least you haven't got a reverse park.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So from my perspective, I don't think I've ever had a comment from another flight deck colleague that's made me, feel, well, actually, I'm a woman sat here and not just a pilot. And most of the comments that have been, like a bad taste joke about parking have been from male passengers, and typically middle-aged.
Yeah,
that's the demographic that has the most. And actually,
I've had a lot from other women.
Yeah, sometimes women as well, and I don't know if it's just because they think, oh, there's a woman pilot, and I don't know. I feel like I should maybe say something, but I don't know what to say, so I'll make it a bit of a joke, and actually it ends up backfiring.
I remember having one issue. I think we were, so I was with a female captain as well. We went to Manchester, and never encountered this guy. It was the dispatcher, I think, and I'd never encountered him before. But he refused to even kind of interact with us, and he would only speak to our male cabin crew member, except when he had to speak to us, obviously. But he was really. We ended up getting him sacked as a result of his behaviour, because it was so blatantly outright. He was outright in your face sexist. I'm not going to mention the kind of comments he made and stuff, but it was as blunt and as obvious and as outright as it could have been. He ended up losing his job over it, thankfully. But it was he refused to even kind of deal with us as the flight crew, and he would only really refer to the male cabin crew member in the back.
That is truly bizarre.
So Lauren, what do you think the solution is? How do we change it? How do we?
I don't know. Do we need to change it, or do we need to change perspectives on it? I don't know, because I don't think there's no quick fix. I mean, all these companies and airlines and all the rest of it going all out to kind of try and even up the balance by taking on specifically women, specifically minorities. There's always going to be a backlash from that. And I don't think positive discrimination is the answer. I don't think that's the intent either. So I don't think there's anything wrong in trying to improve your diversity numbers, but we shouldn't be trying to do that in a way that is going to be detracting from, actually recruiting by ability rather than, but the fact is, the problem with the big problem is it's not just an equality issue. It's a kind of lifestyle issue. There are problems with other number of girls I've met through visits to schools or at shows or through social media who have said to me things like, "Oh, I didn't even know that these kind of careers, whatever it is, were an option." And I've had several sort of young women sort of email me and say, "Oh, I met you and talked to you, and after having that conversation, I went off and had a look at what my options were at school, and I decided not to do the thing I was being pushed into, and I went into engineering, or I went into kind of science roles." And I've had comments like that and emails like that from people, and I think the issue is one of visibility. I think there are an awful lot of, and it begins like from a very early age. You're never going to get past the cultural issue within the family itself, but we could be doing more maybe in schools from an early age to sort of encourage more kind of STEM engagement and like make that playing field a bit easier, a bit more even. Because at the moment it's like boys are expected to do these things and girls are expected to do something else. It's like, well, does it need to be that way? Maybe we need to maybe that's where we need to be sort of addressing the balance. I think everything else comes on from that. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but as long as we keep on trying in the right ways.
I suspect it's generational. I see, the kinds of education that our kids are exposed to, and it's much more kind of inclusive and open and than certainly mine was. And I guess the benefit of a sort of positive discrimination campaign is that for the person who is in a situation a bit like you've described, where you don't have a terribly supportive environment, it might make them think, actually, maybe I can do that, and just propel them in that direction.
Yeah, that's definitely a positive. On the flip side of that, though, and something that I've experienced on and off regularly over the years, even though perhaps I haven't experienced any particular positive discrimination myself, the assumption is you probably have. The thing is, with offering opportunities to minorities that you're not offering to everyone, is then there's a bit of resentment that gets built within the rest of the population, and whether or not there has been any positive discrimination, any assumption of that, then is a very negative thing, and you get a lot of backlash for that. I mean, the number of comments or messages I've had over the years of, "Oh, you're only doing this, you're only flying this airplane because you must have slept with X, Y, and Z." It's like, well, no, that's not what has happened, because believe it or not, I can actually do this. This is everything I am doing is a product of the work that I have done. And everything that I've achieved is a product of the ability that I have gained and the skills that I have worked on. But the comments you get are, "Oh, you're only doing that because you're a woman. I wouldn't have had that opportunity." And it's like, I don't know what the answer to this is, because you're right. There needs to be a level of positive discrimination in order to gain the right visibility to start evening up that balance. But that negative side of it is so powerful. I don't know what the answer is.
It's interesting. But we were talking earlier about a picture that Mark and I had saw, and it actually resonated with us quite a bit. And it was about equality and equity and the difference between the two. And you've talked about this, Lauren, actually, in the last 5 minutes. You've talked about it more than once. Equality, the person on the right still can't see over the fence. Equity, guess what? We can all see over the fence. And it's more about equity than equality. And I think, actually, it's not just positive discrimination. We need to understand why people are not attracted to this as a career in the first place. What's the barrier that stops them applying? Is it financial? As United are trying to remove the financial barrier, which I think is amazing. That'll get a lot more people into this. But there's other ridiculous things, and Lyndsay, I hope you don't mind me mentioning that the pregnancy arrangements for pilots are abhorrent, actually, which would put people off, if you wanted to have a family. And actually, there are parts of that would probably put you off either the career or having a family, and you would have to choose. And Mark and Lyndsay are fortunate enough not to have made that choice, but there are others who will have to. And I think that's appalling, but that's other barriers. It's not just about gender. It's not just about that. There are lots of other things as well.
One thing I have thought, Scott, is that actually the aviation landscape might change with the advent of drones and aviation systems that you can fly from home. Basically, is that the job might change and it might appeal to a wider group of people as well. A different skill set. For example, you do not necessarily have to be fully able-bodied to sit and fly a drone from a office type environment somewhere, which is really kind of interesting. But there we go. Anyway, without turning this into a massive kind of Radio 4 program,
right? I'm gonna get my questions in.
Well,
in fact, there's some viewer questions.
I'm going to take us back to aeroplanes. Lauren, top 3 aircraft for fun flying after the pits. Totally dropped this on you, by the way, so I'll pad for a little bit while you think it out. I've got my 3 because I've been thinking it up.
Are we talking top 3 that I have flown? Should we go with
No. Fantasy.
Fun.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to go with the ones I've flown, and then I'll go with the fantasy ones because I think it's going to be easier to differentiate that. Okay, Yak 50. Just I mean, there are no words. The aeroplane is just. If I could afford to have one, I would buy one tomorrow. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. For a nice warm summer's day, maybe a Stearman. I wouldn't want to do much aerobatics and a bit pants for that, but just kind of flying around, strip flying, big radial. I mean, I love a radial engine. But for fun flying, I would say the biggest grin factor of anything that I've ever flown is our little thruster microlight that we have up at the little strip, which,
really?
I know, it's a bit of a curveball, that one, isn't it? So it's a little 2-stroke lawnmower thing with a fabric wing, and like you sit on little plastic, like school assembly chairs, sort of bolted into this
Mark,
thing.
I've seen it on Twitter. There is no freaking way you would get me in it. In fact, I don't even think it'd have enough power to get me off the ground. It has about a 5 horsepower engine. My lawnmower's got more power, and it's made of string and scaffolding poles, and that's never a good combination.
It's hilarious. It's everyone's really snobbish when they come flying in it. There's a few people that we've sort of taken up, but it's like everyone's really like, "Oh, I'm not getting in that," blah blah blah, and it scares me. It gives me, absolutely terrifies me. The thing, there's no brakes, there's no radio. It's just you could fall out of the side of it quite easily, and it's like, ooh, that's a bit.
You could fall out. Oh, that's a
go, Mark. What's yours? Go, Mark.
Excitement.
Everything.
What's yours then?
60 knots. Everything happens at 60 knots. It climbs, it cruises, it approaches at 60 knots. It's easy. But it's there's nothing else that's like you get out with the biggest grin because it's just hilarious. It's just the most hysterical thing I've ever flown.
What would give you that grin, Mark?
My 3 would be a super decathlon. Because it's 80% of a pits, but with none of the sort of drama of basically wedging yourself into a tiny noise box. Yak 50, but hands down the aeroplane that just made me smile the most. I don't know what it was about it, but I could just sort of continually loop it. I think that was the entertainment. It didn't matter what speed, as long as it was. I had the throttle open, I could pull the stick back and it would loop. That was quite fun. And probably Chipmunk.
Oh, Chipmunk.
Lyndsay?
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather have something a little bit more
Go
comfortable.
on.
I'd like Mark to take me up in the pits.
Would you?
Yeah, I think.
But why wouldn't you fly it yourself?
Well, because you'd
I wouldn't
throw it around.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know what else really. That's kind of my top one.
No soft spot for your Grob 109.
No. Not really.
Scottie?
Lysander would have to be up there in the big smile brigade. I have a penchant for the SOE Lysander. I love that aeroplane. probably a Tupolev Bear, a T95. I really, fastest turboprop ever. It would be quite. It'd be quite cool to get in one of those and just freaking put it to push the levers to the floor and see what you could get out of it. And the last one, I'm with Lyndsay. It has to be a bit of comfort, and I'd love to go in the Boom Aero Supersonic replacement for Concorde. They've built the smaller version now, which is about to fly. I really, really would love to be able to sit in the back of that and sip champagne at Mach 5. That would be quite cool.
Did you have a fantasy hanger item, Lauren?
Oh, fancy hanger item, Sea Fury.
Yeah, there we go.
Right, okay, I'm going to wrap up with our questions that we ask of all of our guests, Lauren. So, Scott, you kick off. You go first.
Looking back at your career, Lauren, and you've done lots in it, what are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I think there's too many. There's too many things. I've just done some amazing things. I guess, actually, do you know what? I'm going to go with what am I most proud of? Hang on, stand by. I need a prop for this.
Oh, we're getting physical stuff happening. Hang on.
Right. That is a drawing. I know, so you use your imagination here, but that is a drawing of me flying my aeroplane at the old Sarum Airshow a few years ago, done by a 4-year-old girl.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
Being given that by her parents gave it to the show organizer, who then sent it on to me. Basically, that was her absolute highlight of the day, and the thing that she most enjoyed and took away from that day was like, oh, this the really cool woman flying this red and white aeroplane at this air show. So I think for me, the thing I'm proudest of is the fact that I know that I have made an impact on a number of people's lives, and I think that is something that I'm far more proud of than any of the bits of paper or accolades or awards that are on the wall. Because and that is cool. The thing that I'm most proud of on my wall. That's above and beyond all the awards and all the rest of it. Because
note to future guests, strong answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren, one question. What advice would you give your 10-year-old self knowing what you know now?
Yeah, you can do it. That's it. Get on with it.
Good answer.
And lastly, next 5 years. What's the shape of the next 5 years for you?
I don't know. This will be an interesting one. Obviously, I've just embarking down this route of flying instruction. I mean, who knows? That may end up being my thing. I honestly don't know yet. So I don't know. I might end up back in an airline role. I might end up doing both. I think the only thing I would like to say with any degree of certainty, barring anything catastrophic happening, is I just want to still be flying in 5 years' time.
Cool. Good answer.
Brilliant.
Lauren, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thanks very much for being so frank and for dealing with those hard questions that we put to you earlier, like, how do you go upside down and stuff. We don't want no more mention of those hard questions. It gives me shivers just thinking about it. All the other stuff we can deal with. There was one thing I wanted to say before you went. You did say, you'd had a hard time going through all of this. It's been tough. But at the end of the day, that's you. That's where you've ended up. And I think that's pretty freaking cool myself. And that's owned by you as well. And I just think that's so cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really loved it.
Thanks, Lauren.
Cheers,
fun.
Lauren.
Bye.
Awesome.
I still can't get over the video at the start.
It was a cool video.
It's a really cool video.
It was a cool video. It's a pity the person that cut it wasn't quite up to the mark this morning. But before we go, Mark, as your social secretary, I've got a couple of things to organise. Spinky would like to say thanks very much for the offer of the flight. Can you get that in the diary? That would be great, because you did say you'd take Adam.
Do that, but he has to not pick me up on my dodgy RT.
Right, okay, pro quo, nothing wrong there. Just to let you know, Lyndsay, there is a plan for tomorrow. Aston is going to have a plan for tomorrow, and if he doesn't have enough,
typical, I'm the last one to know about it. It would seem.
Yeah, I know, but and if he hasn't got enough money, I'll try and convince Sharon to allow me to have a share in a cub. It's never happened. It will never happen. Oh, I know. And there was one thing that I saw earlier which really did make me laugh. and I'm trying to find it now. It was
it me being
John Thompson, train driver, follows us every show.
Yeah.
Well, John, I know you comment about my weight sometimes, but at least I've never been ballast and been asked to move rows on a Dash 8 for trim and balance. All right, so you're the only one who's been ballast, John. Just remember that.
Poor John.
Anyway, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
So next week we've got Steve Slater, who's the CEO of the Light Aircraft Association. So he's going to be coming on to tell us all about permit flying, what permit flying is, how it's a really accessible way to sort of get into aviation and into flying.
It'd be interesting to hear because, of course, airplanes for the last 2 guests, they're all airplanes.
Yeah.
None of them are factory built. So there we go. Anyway,
yeah, amazing. Really looking forward to it. Remember, everyone, if you enjoyed this week's show, don't forget to click the button. Like Mark, I can never remember where it is. It's down there.
Somewhere.
I think it's
You'll
down
figure it
there
out.
somewhere. Yeah, figure it out. Click the button and subscribe. Can't wait to see you next week.
See you, Scottie.
See you later, gang. Bye.
Bye.